I want you to think about prayer and worship. What is it that keeps you from really praying and really worshiping? I think oftentimes we can't do either of those simply because we're not a vessel. In 2 Kings chapter 4, the first 6 verses talks about a widow and her 2 sons. They're falling on hard times. They can't pay the taxes. And they would come and actually enslave her sons to pay off the debt. The problem is it was an abused privilege in the day. She had nothing to give except for just a little oil. But oil was significant in those days. And she was willing to sacrifice this expensive item. But also in the Bible, oil represents the Holy Spirit. The problem was not the oil. The problem, of course, when you read through the passage, is there was nothing to put the oil in, or that she had just a little bit of it. So the oil wasn't the problem. The oil was actually available. She had the oil. She needed a vessel. And God is looking for vessels. So the question is, are you willing to be God's vessel? And what does that actually look like? How can I become God's vessel? God multiplied the oil. She went to Elijah and she said, listen, I have this little bit of oil. And he says, well, go. Don't just find a few, but find many vessels, many jars to put the oil in. She says, well, I only have this little bit of oil. But he explains to her, you'll get this, you'll pour it, and it will continue to flow. The Holy Spirit will continue to flow. Isn't this amazing? So she gathered with her sons all the jars, and he said specifically, close the door behind you. That is, close the door to the things that need to be shut out, pushed away. Focus on the things of God, and it will vastly change your life. So she started pouring the oil, and one jar was filled, and her son brought another one, and that one was filled, all the way to the point of having no more vessels. And she calls out and she says, bring another vessel, bring another jar. And her sons say, we have no more vessels. And the oil stopped flowing when the vessel ran out. He needed a vessel to pour into. The Holy Spirit needs a vessel to pour into. And so the question is, are you willing? Are you willing to be that vessel? See, we're nothing significant outside of what God does in us. It is the Holy Spirit working in our lives. I want you to think about this. Because when you order a coffee, you don't just order coffee and hold out your hands and have them pour that hot coffee into your hands. You have a vessel. A cup of coffee is what you order. When you get a pizza, the delivery guy doesn't come to the door with it in his hands and just hand it to you. He puts it into a vessel, a box. And the box is not expensive. The cup is not expensive. We are like that 39-cent box. The second that we think we're valuable is the second and the very moment that we lose our value. But the key to being a vessel, the key to being that 39-cent box that becomes so incredibly valuable is when the Spirit of God pours through us. And these are the 2 keys that we get from Jentezen Franklin in this message. Be a vessel. He says, be clean and be empty. You know why we're not able to pray? You know why we're not able to worship God? Really? We're not clean and we're not empty. So God's not working through us. Be clean and be empty, and God will fill you up. He will give you purpose. He will make you into a miracle. His oil will pour through you, and His will be the thing that you're following. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 says, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, the oil. The body is a vessel for the oil to flow through, for the Holy Spirit to do His work. The devil is really good at trying to disrupt, to mess up the vessel's life. What's he doing to mess you up? You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be empty. Choose to be a clean, empty vessel, because nothing else will satisfy. Nothing else. It's so amazing to me that the devil is defeated, but yet we allow him to come into our life and wreck this vessel that God has such great plans for. If you are a child of God, if you know Him personally, you are a vessel. If you don't know Him personally, you can be. And the reality is we pursue all the wrong things. The devil is so defeated, he doesn't even have keys to his own house. Jesus died, he was buried in a borrowed tomb. That's significant to me. He was buried in a borrowed tomb. Why would you bury someone, a dead body, in a borrowed tomb? Because he borrowed a tomb, but he bought you. And we have such victory over all the things that keep this vessel from being clean, and yet we continue to give in. But we don't have to. You are the answer for this generation, but you have to commit to being a clean and empty vessel to be used by God.